What's up, people? Welcome back to 4Bet Blind. My name is Will. I'm gearing up for my trip to the World Series next week, which means building up my bankroll and trying to play as much poker as possible. During this session, I only had a few hours during the day to play, but that didn't stop me from getting some huge hands and even getting into an argument with a player at my table that ended with me leaving the game. Without further ado, let's jump in. This session starts at Beach Poker Club in Eugene, Oregon. Today the game is a 1-3, so I buy in for $300 and get a very warm welcome to the table when I look down at pocket aces. It's folded to me and I open to $15. Just kidding, apparently an early position player already opened to $8 and my dumbass missed it. Well, that's why we practice, right folks? To make matters worse, I get called by the low jack, small blind, and original raiser, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. At this point, I'm just looking for something safe and dry, so of course we get a board that's wetter than Lou Holtz talking into a microphone. It's Queen Jack 7 with a flush draw. The small blind and original raiser both check, and I bet $40, around 2/3 pot. The low jack calls and everyone else folds, so we're going heads up to a turn, which brings the 9 of spades. This is a bad card, as basically my opponent's entire range picks up equity. That being said, my opponent has only around $100 left, and I think there are enough one pair plus straight draw type hands that will call a jam, so I go all in and shitty snap called. Well, hopefully he has Queen 10, or I can suck out on the river somehow. It looks like that might be the case, as the river is the jack of clubs giving me aces up and some more showdown value versus my opponent's range. Doesn't matter though, my opponent shows 8-10 of diamonds. He absolutely drilled the gutter on the turn and I was drawing dead. I add on for 200. I do a bunch of folding before the next hand when the cutoff opens to $10 and I look down at pocket aces again. I'm not going to make the same mistake as last time, so this time I 3-bet big to 35. The cutoff quickly calls and we're off to a flop that's pretty nice. It's deuce 6-6 with 2 hearts. My opponent only has around 160 left, and with this shallow SPR, I decide to check and let his range catch up a bit, knowing I can still get the money in on the turn and river. So I check, and he quickly checks back. The turn is the 8 of spades, bringing another flush draw and some straight draws, so I decide it's time to start pumping some money in. I bet 45. My opponent spends a fair bit of time deliberating before... Well, that's unexpected. This spot isn't great, but I don't think I can fold. I could do some analysis on my opponent's value range and try to calculate how I'm faring versus those hands, but I have aces, so I decide to turn my brain off and just go for it, kind of like the writers of the TV show Walker, Texas Ranger did when they wrote this scene.
Walker told me I have AIDS.
I make the call and the river is the 10 of hearts completing the flush and straight. That doesn't matter though, as my opponent flips over 5-6 of clubs for flop trips. Another pair of aces, another double up for an opponent. After this, I win a few small pots with some decent hands before the game breaks early. I'm not quite ready to call it a day though, so I head across town to Full House Poker, one of Eugene's premier poker clubs that features regular tournaments and cash games alongside some creative promotions. I buy in for 200 and take a seat at a 1-2 table. The first hand of note starts when the button opens to $8 and I'm in the small blind with ace jack. Definitely want to raise this up versus a button open, so I make it $30. The button begins to mull things over before eventually responding with a 4-bet, making it $80. Back to me, and although I'm getting a decent price, this is a pretty bad spot. If I were suited, or if my opponent's range weren't as top heavy as Elon Musk with his shirt off, I'd be much more inclined to call. But absent those circumstances, this is a fold. Next orbit, there's a cutoff open to 8 and a button call when I look down at pocket 8s. I like to employ a linear 3-bet strategy in these loose games, and we're also short-handed, so this is a good spot to raise. I make it $30, which is probably a little too small. Both the cutoff and button call, and the 3 of us see a 3-3-7 flop. That's about as good as it gets with pocket 8s, so I opt for a C-bet of $35. Both players decide to opt out, however, and I take down the pot. Next, there's a hijack open to 15 before a player on the button with a VPIP number like Nick Airball's IQ makes the call. I'm in the small blind and I look down at ace-king suited. I definitely want to raise here, the question is how much. I want to make it small enough that my opponents will continue with the weakest portions of their range, but big enough that the SPR allows me to stack off on basically every flop. I only have around 150 in my stack at this point, so I decide on a raise to 75, which will ensure a stack to pot ratio of less than 1. It doesn't come to that though, as the hijack snap rips in his remaining stack. The button instantly calls, and I'm right behind him. So now it's a three-way all-in, and given the speed at which these guys put their money in, I'm fully expecting to take another brutal beat with a premium hand. I might be more live than I think though, as we play the show 1 card game and the hijack flips the 9 of hearts while the button flips the 4 of clubs. So it looks like both my cards might be live here. Let's go to the run out.
King. Oh wow, king. Nice hand. Bing. Bing.
Finally, I'm on the right side of variance as I spike the king and triple up with a nice pot. Shortly after this hand, that table breaks, and as I'm moving to the new table, I hear someone say, "I will not be recorded under any circumstances." I've been doing this vlog for a few months now, and this is the first time this has ever happened to me. Now I've had people tell me, please don't record my face, please don't record my voice, I don't want to be on camera, I owe too much money in child support, etc. And I totally respect that, which is why I never include faces and often shoot at a low angle. When I try to point out the fact that most of my footage looks like it could be part of a study on dust mite habitats, the player says, "It doesn't matter," and shuts the conversation down. Now to be honest, I was irritated. I wanted to keep playing this game, I wanted to keep filming, but whatever, they're allowed to say no. What really got to me was what happened after this. Not even 5 minutes later, a professional photographer walks in the door and begins setting up equipment. The poker room announces that they've hired a photographer to take photos of everyone present to be posted on a little site called Google. The floor person asks if anyone has an issue being photographed, and as you'd expect, no one says a goddamn word. In the end, between my 2 sessions, I was in for 700 and cashed out for 720, giving me a net profit of $20. As I mentioned earlier, I'm gearing up for a trip to Vegas, so that's where I'll be next week. I'm really curious to see how one of the rule changes they implemented this year impacts the series. I covered that rule change and its implications in an earlier video, click here if you're interested. Anyways, thank you for watching, please like, comment, and subscribe to help support the channel, and I will see y'all in the next video.